The Department of Public Health and Human Services is pleased to bring you Aging Horizons. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, fraud, legal issues, veterans benefits, and caregiving. Aging Horizons is a program dedicated to inform and prepare Montanans on these timely issues, making a difference to you and your loved ones. Here now is today's program host.
Hi folks, today on Aging Horizons we have a really fun show planned for you. We're going to be talking about Christmas in Montana way back, cowboy times. We're going to be talking about some of the first celebrations, how the miners celebrated and decorated, just all kinds of things like that that'll be interesting and fun to hear about. We have a great guest with us, so join us.
Every 65 seconds, someone is affected with Alzheimer's or other dementias. Many become isolated at a time when help is most needed. If you or someone you love is affected, help is available, both for people with memory loss and their caregivers. Memory loss can feel frightening, but you are not alone. Call the free 24/7 Alzheimer's Association helpline, 800-272-3900, for guidance and support.
This is Bill. He just received his new Medicare card and is following some simple rules to protect himself from fraud. He knows to never give out his Medicare, Social Security, or bank number over the phone. And this is Nancy. She knows that to detect any problems, she always reads her Medicare summary notice or Medicare Advantage EOB to make sure the billing is correct. Both Bill and Nancy know that anything suspicious can be reported to Montana SMP at 1-800-551-3191.
45 years, 2 packs a day. That's like $80,000. I thought I was just hurting myself until I fell asleep in a chair with a cigarette. The whole house went up. I lost it all. I knew smoking was expensive, but I never thought it would cost me everything.
I've been shooting since I was young. It's something I've always enjoyed. I wasn't feeling like myself, when my friend noticed. He asked if he could hold onto my guns temporarily. At first, I was a little shocked, but then I agreed. I think he saved my life that day.
Hello everyone and welcome to Aging Horizons, brought to you by the Department of Public Health and Human Services. I'm your host, Kimmy Everman, and we just have a fun, festive holiday show for you today. We have Ellen Baumler with us, and Ellen, you're a historian.
I am.
And you have, I've seen some of the things that you're going to talk about today. Mm-hmm. This is so interesting. Well, let's talk about it. What was the first kind of Christmas like in Montana?
Well, the first Christmas actually that was celebrated, recorded that we know about, was in 1841, which was, a long time ago, when the Jesuits arrived at St. Mary's Mission. They founded St. Mary's Mission in late September 1841, and then that next Christmas would have been the first recorded Christmas celebrated here in Montana. And, a very special thing happened at that Christmas. On Christmas Eve, a young orphan boy who knew nothing about Christianity entered the lodge of his friend and saw this vision. And in the vision, he saw this beautiful woman that was clothed in white. She had a star on top of her head. He could see her beating heart through her clothing. And from her beating heart, these rays of light emanated. And she spoke to him, and she said that she was very pleased that they had named the mission after her. Oh, wow. And he had no knowledge of Mary or anything, and told the Jesuits about it, and they felt truly that the mission had been blessed. Aww. And so that was really the first recorded Christmas.
And Ellen, just very quickly, when you say recorded, so people keep diaries?
Yeah, the priest and the lay brothers kept diaries, and they kept notes about everything that happened at the mission. Okay. And so that's how we know.
Okay.
And about 16 years later, in 1857, James and Granville Stewart, who are very well known here in Montana, were camped in the Beaverhead Valley. And this is the next recorded Christmas, because we know that Granville Stewart wrote about this in 40 Years on the Frontier. Anyway, he was camped in the Beaverhead. Richard Grant, who was later on, his son was the founder of the Grant Coors Ranch. Richard Grant was also camped about 25 miles away, and there were these scattered miners that were just sort of lounging around, I guess, in the wintertime. And so Richard Grant invited them all to Christmas dinner. And he had this fantastic feast, which consisted of, the men hadn't had any bread in a long time. And Grant had hoarded some flour. So he made soda bread. So they had soda bread and choke cherry preserves and smoked buffalo meat and boiled buffalo tongue and coffee. Okay. And it was a remarkable feast.
I'd try everything but the tongue.
Me too. I don't think I would like that.
And I bet they loved it. I mean,
they did. It was just something.
Preserves.
It was just something that worthy of writing about. So
right.
Granville Stewart recorded that. And then, a little bit later on in the mid-1860s, we had these mining camps that were booming. There's a fantastic letter that's preserved in the Montana Historical Society archives by an 8-year-old by the name of Homer Thomas. And Homer had just newly arrived with his family from Illinois. By covered wagon, and they were wintering in Virginia City. A lot of times people did winter there. Oh. And so they were wintering there, and he wrote a letter to his grandmother just before Christmas. And some of the things that he says, are just very perceptive for an 8-year-old. And he says to her, I'm glad that you didn't come with us because the trip was really, really hard and you wouldn't have made it, he says. And he says that he doesn't like Virginia City. It's just terrible because miners dressed in these old, ragged, dirty clothes, not like at home.
Sure.
And he says that he misses his grandmother's cakes, and he misses apples and cider. And he says, I expect that it's going to be a great country here someday, but I don't care for that, he says. As soon as I can get enough gold, I bet you I'm going to come back. And so he goes on and he says, I don't expect to get many things this Christmas, for it's not like at home because old Santa Claus doesn't come out here to give children things because he thinks all the children are too smart to come to this old place. Well, he says, I can do without, but I want you to save me some nice things for when I come back home. But the years passed, and he never did return to Illinois. He followed in his father's footsteps and became the owner of a mill, and Illinois just faded into a childhood memory. It's, kind of sad, isn't it?
Yeah, but at the same time, gosh, he must have found a life here he loved.
He did.
And a family probably that he loved.
And that's, kind of a common story. People didn't tend to go back. But my most favorite Christmas story has to do with Mary Ronan, who tells us that in winter of 1866 here in Helena, Helena was a booming camp and they did a lot of sledding, but girls were forbidden because if they upended themselves and a skirt went over their heads, they would never live down the, it would ruin their reputation. So anyway, Christmas Eve, they were decorating for the church, which is at the top of the Broadway hill. Charlie Curtis takes one of these trees they hadn't chopped up, pulls it to the top of the Broadway hill and asks Mary to step on the branches. And he gets a running start, and there they go, flying down the Broadway hill. She describes it in this wonderful way that just the wind rushed past her, and she had this sudden feeling of freedom that she had never felt before.
Okay, I know that hill. I don't know if I can try it, but
it's still there. It's exactly as it was, but now it's paved,
Folks, stay with us.
Today, class, we'll be discussing the term ombudsman, a word we borrowed from the Swedes and never gave back. Say you're a resident or you have a loved one in long-term care. Now, what do you do if you're not happy with the care and services you receive? You call your long-term care ombudsman, of course. Your ombudsman is available to support you and your rights. An advocate on your behalf could be the ticket. This is your home. If you have questions, the numbers right there below me have all the answers. Class dismissed.
I was the last guy you'd expect to get diabetes. I was a competitive runner and I always took care of myself. So when I was diagnosed, it kind of threw me. But it's really encouraging to know I'm not alone with it. There are a lot of other people going through the same things as I am. It takes some effort. You have to keep after it. Exercise, meds, and diet are the key. But there are a lot of folks who want me to succeed. Diabetes is not the end of the world. With effort and attitude, you can have a normal life.
A decade of Montana fourth graders on Energy Share. If you're having trouble keeping your home warm this winter, Energy Share of Montana is here to help. We've helped thousands of Montanans who are having trouble paying their energy bills, and getting assistance from the friendly folks at Energy Share is only a phone call or Google search away. Energy Share is not a government program. It's neighbors helping neighbors who face energy emergencies. The Montana way. Call or visit our website today. Thanks to Energy Share, I'm cozy like a bear.
I think the most pleasant surprise when we turned 65 and signed up for Medicare Part B was finding out about our Welcome to Medicare preventive visit.
It was free, and it gave us the opportunity to visit with our doctors and establish a plan for our health going forward.
They reviewed our medical history, measured our height, weight, blood pressure, and counseled us on other risk factors.
To learn more about Medicare's free or low-cost preventive and wellness benefits, call your local SHIP counselor at 800-551-3191. I mentioned it's free, right?
Twice.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Aging Horizons. We're here with Ellen Baumler today talking about Christmas in Montana. And Ellen, you know, great stories, number one, and I am maybe going to try that down the Broadway Hill. But what about things like Christmas trees and holiday shopping, things that we do without even a thought now?
It was pretty hard back then, you know. I guess the main problem with Christmas trees is that they were easy to come by here in the mining camps, you know, early on before everything was cut down. But the difficulty really was decorating the trees because it was hard to find ribbons. Things had to come from far away by ox team or mule train, and so it was very difficult to decorate trees. So what they did was they would usually cut a very large tree and put it up in the courthouse or in a community center or in a church, and then everyone would get together and decorate it, you know, communally. And you know, the thing I think is interesting is that they never did put gifts under the tree. They would hang them on the tree. And so, you know, you have that song, Gifts on the Tree, and that's why nuts and candy and little gifts and things would be used as decorations. But in 1876 in Butte, women had fundraised all year, and they raised $170 to decorate a tree, buy gifts for every child between the ages of 2 and 13. And they had a Santa Claus, actually Kris Kringle. He was dressed in a buffalo coat, and he happened to have these long white whiskers, and you know, the gifts were very ceremoniously distributed. 14-year-olds had reason to wish that they were kids again, you know?
Yes.
But then by the 1880s, trees were common in households. It was easier to get things to decorate. And by the 1890s, 1 in 5 households in Montana had a Christmas tree.
Oh, wow.
And candles were beginning to be replaced by electric lights, which was, you know, candles were very scary on those dry trees. Right. Decorations were still costly, but you could save them from year to year, and that, you know, really precipitated seasonal Christmas trees, and it made sort of Christmas trees a necessity because you had these stockpiled decorations. And in 1910, the Missoulian said, even if you're too old to hang a stocking and you have no youngsters in your household, don't give up on the idea of having a Christmas tree. And we haven't, you know, we still do that, which is cool. I have always thought that Christmas Day was different. had a different feeling than other days in the year. I don't know why, and if other people feel that way, but in 1899, there was a reporter from the Anaconda Standard who spent a day in a logging camp, spent Christmas Day in a logging camp. And he wrote this wonderful description about how the men felled these trees all around them, but the lumberjacks had no day off on Christmas, and they were surrounded by these fir trees, but they had no Christmas tree.
Right.
But when the cook called them into Christmas dinner, they came in a lot faster than usual. And they would be seated at this long table, and the cooks would bring in these big turkeys, and the smell would waft down the way, and the feast would begin. And it's interesting how the holiday spirit works its way into almost every remote place.
Yeah, and there's not much breaking bread together.
No, there's not. That's true. So shopping was important back then, as it is today. You could, in 1896, you could buy 2 dozen oranges or a gallon of cranberries for 35 cents. Fresh flounder was 10 cents a pound. Jackrabbits were 24 cents each. You could get a quart can of New York oysters for 35 cents. Whole possums were 95 cents a piece. But the most important gift in 1896 was the hot water bag.
No.
Now, it was advertised with this wonderful poem. In winter when it's snowing and the storms are wildly blowing, and all the earth is covered o'er with robes of ice and sleet. Oh, then our hearts are mellow with compassion for the fellow who was tortured through the night with his wife's cold feet. By 1899 to the 1920s, Hoosiers were the most important piece a woman could have in her kitchen, and every housewife wanted a Hoosier.
And remind us what a Hoosier is.
A Hoosier is what you find in antique stores, and it has all of the things that you need in the kitchen. A place to put your spices, a place to roll out your dough, a place to put your flour and your sugar, and it was just a very essential thing. Lou Switzer of Kalispell highlighted patriotism at the end of World War I, declaring that it's your patriotic duty to buy useful gifts, so select your Hoosier at once. And then finally in the 1920s, it was refrigerators with freezer units that were first on the market, and frozen desserts and frozen plum pudding and frozen cranberry ice and that kind of thing.
And we're talking electric. We're not talking the kind you put a big old
electric
piece of,
ones.
Yes,
electric ones, and that's why it was very special. And there was this really horrible recipe for a frozen Christmas salad that was made with cream cheese, green peppers, chopped pimento, lemon juice, and whipped cream. That sounds horrible.
I have to say, my worst is Jell-O with carrots.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Thank you, Ellen. This is just so much fun. And folks, you have your own Christmas traditions and your own holiday things that you love. And it's fun to find out what came before us and what really paved the way to what we see today and how we decide on our own Christmas times and when we're with our friends and family. So we have a whole lot more to tell you. Come on back.
Respite. It's okay to need it. It's okay to want it. Will you provide it?
The hard part about having outside help is that there's not a lot of people out there who can do that kind of work. We've been very fortunate that our Bonnie has been with us for 7 years. I don't know what I'd do without her. I need her in our lives. She's our second mother. And I can't help but think of her that way.
To find out how to change lives, including your own, call 800-224-6034 or visit respite.mt.gov.
Did you just text me?
I didn't want to disturb you if you were sleeping.
Sleeping? I'm sitting right next to you, silly.
There you are. Hey, I found a couple of Medicare helping programs online that I think we ought to look into.
It says if we qualify, we can get help paying for our prescription drugs. Oh, and there's a program that can help pay our Part B premium.
To learn more about extra help and Medicare savings programs, call your local SHIP counselor today.
Maybe I better text him.
Elder abuse is a growing problem, and it's happening right here in our Montana communities. At least 1 in 10 older adults are victims of physical or emotional abuse, financial exploitation, or neglect. To get help or report elder abuse, call your local area agency on aging or Adult Protective Services at 1-844-277-9300.
Hi folks, welcome back to Aging Horizons. We're here with Ellen Baumler, historian today, talking about Christmas in Montana, and as I like to say, way back in the cowboy times. Now, Ellen, one of the things that sort of is interesting that you wanted to talk about today had to do with the Anaconda Copper Mining Company.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So, well, the copper mining company is usually portrayed in a really negative light.
Yeah, they were the big green meanie,
It was
right?
like, the hydra-headed snake.
Yep.
And sometimes, the company did try to soften its negativity by doing good works. And especially in 1934, which was the height of the Great Depression, 300 children, orphans at the state orphanage in Twin Bridges truly benefited from the company's public generosity. Children were asked to submit a first and second request to Santa Claus. And so the list went to the company offices in Butte. Staff shopped and chose the gifts from the list. And some of the gifts are really interesting. The lists included sheepskin coats, doll buggies, pleated hip skirts, skates, Tinker toys, Tarzan books, phonographs, sleds, leatherette helmets, wristwatches, brownie cameras, and bamboo fishing outfits. So staff wrapped each gift with the child's name and their cottage number. At that time, the children were housed in various cottages on the campus. And each particular cottage had its own Christmas tree, and at this time, gifts were placed under the tree and not on.
Sure, yeah.
And so late on Christmas Eve, they delivered the presents and put them under the trees with a generous supply of nuts and candy, too. And at least on this particular Christmas morning in 1934, the coiled snake of the Anaconda Copper Mining Company actually directed its grip to a truly needy population and used its wealth to do something.
And that's a lovely story because I don't often think about that orphanage, but I think we all kind of have
300 kids.
Yeah.
Just, that's a lot of kids.
So that's truly lovely.
Yeah.
Another thing that because we're Montana and we're from this beautiful state, have we ever had any of the national Christmas trees?
We have 3 different times.
Oh, wow.
And 1958, 1989, and 2008. But probably the one, 1989, is the one that was most dramatic. That was the year of our centennial, the statehood centennial. And in that year, the official Capitol Christmas Tree Committee looked for someone who had experience with chainsaws, but also was active in the community. Mm-hmm. And so they chose this guy by the name of Bill Chrismore to actually fell the tree. And they went out to the Kootenai National Forest in Lincoln County, and about 300 spectators gathered.
Wow.
And they had chosen a giant Engelmann spruce tree. But unfortunately, as Chrismore began to go at his work with the chainsaw, there were so many people milling around that he got distracted, I think, and the tree didn't fall into the road the way it was supposed to. It actually fell onto a truck. And so then they had to remove the tree from the truck, and as they were doing that, it snapped in half.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so fortunately they had a second choice.
Good.
And this second choice was a 43-year-old, 67-foot Engelmann spruce. And Chris Moore later said that was his favorite tree anyhow.
Anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the spruce tree was soon felled, and it was on its way to Washington. And they sent the old tree, also the top half of it, in case branches got destroyed in the transit. But, you know, Chris Moore did say that he really liked the second tree better.
Well, and how lovely that we've been 3 times.
I know, it's pretty
tasked for
exciting.
that.
And
It
why
is.
wouldn't we be? I mean, this is where some of the most beautiful trees
Exactly.
are found.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So
now I know that one of the things that we've kind of talked about a little bit off camera is that holidays sometimes can bring out not the greatest in some folks.
Yeah.
And there's a situation in Billings in 1993, I guess, that we want to talk about here as part of our sort of festive show.
Yeah,
So
I
please
really like to talk about this incident. Not everyone celebrates Christmas,
Right.
You know, but the holidays are for everyone, I think. And at Christmas time in 1993, actually on December 2nd, at the beginning of the holiday season, there was a menorah, which is a symbol of the celebration of Hanukkah, precipitated this terrible act of violence when a brick came hurling through the bedroom window of 5-year-old Isaac Schnitzer. He had displayed a menorah in the window, and unfortunately it precipitated this violent act. The brick landed on his bed amidst a hail of glass. Fortunately, Isaac wasn't hurt. But, you know, the Schnitzers were among a rather small group of Jewish families in Billings at that time. And unfortunately, their religion became a target of bigotry and vandalism. There had been some supremacist groups that moved into the area in the 1980s, and they were beginning to commit crimes against various minorities. Well, this particular 1993, this particular holiday season, Billings suffered desecration of its Jewish cemetery. There were threatening calls that were made to Jewish families, and there was swastika was painted on the home of an interracial couple. So there was a lot of bad stuff going on, and the Schnitzers were advised to remove the menorah from their window. This, of course, violated their religious rights, the First Amendment rights, and Christians were wondering.
Billings was able to take it, and
well, Christians were wondering what would happen, you know, if a Christmas tree precipitated violence in their own homes. And so, anyway, yes, from that, this movement, not in your town or not in our town, grew out, and it's still an active movement. And,
awesome.
You know, 10,000 homes displayed menorahs in Billings.
Thank you so much, Ellen. It was a pleasure having you here. Thanks so much.
Special thanks to the Department of Public Health and Human Services for their continued support. Hosts on Aging Horizons are program specialists at the Montana Office on Aging. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions. For more information about Aging Horizons, call the Department of Public Health and Human Services toll-free at 800-332-2272.